Namo Phat. Thanks so much for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This wonderful sound calls us back to our true home. The second mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I vow to cultivate loving kindness and learn ways to work for the well-being of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I will practice generosity by sharing my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in real need. I'm determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others. I will respect the property of others, but I will prevent others from profiting from human suffering or the suffering of other species on earth. For a Dharma lesson, we've been reading Abundant, Exalted, Immeasurable by Ajahn Pasanno, and we're continuing in Chapter 8, Questions and Answers. Question: what happens when someone carefully builds a fire, but it suddenly turns into a forest fire, uncontrollable, and the person experiences mania, delusions, and paranoia? What is the spiritual treatment for this? Answer: one of the first spiritual treatments is to stop meditating. When there isn't a very solid anchor in what is real, when one is caught up in delusions, then it's important not to feed the desire to meditate or delight in those delusions, manic states, or paranoia. That doesn't mean there is no spiritual treatment for such delusions, because I think some of the most spiritual healing work that can be done is around keeping precepts, associating with people who are virtuous, and drawing close to teachings and good teachers. It's very grounding. Also, there are all of the aspects of generosity, giving, and service. These are extremely positive qualities that nurture a sense of stability and feeling good about ourselves. Often, people go into manic states, delusions, and paranoia because they don't feel so good about themselves. They want to become something else, and they do it through meditation. Then they push the mind to distance themselves from how they perceive themselves to be, trying to become something else. We so-called normal people also do that. We need to be attentive. As a young monk and then as a young abbot, I thought meditation was a panacea, a remedy for everything. Experience has shown me that it's not. It is helpful to have pharmaceuticals around sometimes. When I was in Thailand, there was a stretch of quite a few years, my middle years as a monk, when I first became the abbot of Wat Nanachat, when at least once or twice a year there would be someone who would flip out. Part of this is just being in a different culture. There's an actual type of psychosis that's generated by the disorientation of being in a different culture. Being in a different culture, in a monastery, and practicing. Suffice it to say that in the early days of people getting interested in Buddhism in Asia, there were some pretty wild and woolly characters out there. A lot of them were my friends in the monastery. In Thailand, a traditional society, when somebody in a monastery goes a bit off, the teacher would usually put them to work, get them into their bodies. They would work in the context of being surrounded by and connecting with people with good virtue and generosity. Don't send them off to meditate. Get them a shovel and get them working. It's really helpful. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. Namo Phat. Thanks so much for joining me today.